Welcome to episode 18 of the Marketing That Grows Your Business live show. Today we are going to talk about numbers. I have invited an amazing guest to the show today. And numbers are one of those things that for many entrepreneurs, we don't love. In fact, we have a love-hate relationship with them, right? The reality is we know we need them, but like, how do we track them? Like, what numbers are important? And, how do you set it up? Like, I used to have this aversion to conversion rates. Like, okay, yeah, I know I need to know that stuff, but it made my head hurt to try to figure it out. So if you're that person, you're in the right place, because we're going to talk about numbers today and how you get a more clarity on your numbers, because the reality is we need them. It's very hard to really figure out what matters in our business if we don't know our numbers. So like I say, you're in the right place if you don't really have a handle on your numbers. Again, welcome. As you guys are coming in, give me a shout out. If you are brand new, just put in #new if you've never been on my show before. And if you haven't, let me introduce myself. My name is Kim Garst, and I'm an online business strategist. I love helping people grow their businesses, make more money in their businesses using digital and social media. If you are an oldie but goodie, you come regularly to my shows, I want to again welcome you. How in the world are you? How is everyone? Is everybody staying safe? We've got, hey, Bruce, so good to see you. Bruce from Chicago. I'm in Virginia with my dad. My dad is 95, and I've been visiting with him, trying to help a little bit. Hey, Irene. And it has been a lot rainy since I've been here. I've been here almost three weeks tomorrow. Hey, Paul, good to see you. And it's a little bit chilly today, but it is sunny. So I'm excited to have sun in my life today. So how is everybody? Again, we're just going to get started in just a moment. Let me let you guys know if, again, all those that have been on the show before know that we do giveaways every week. This week is no different. We'll do giveaways. We have a couple of things. Let me tell you what the giveaways are. One is in fact, we'll just pop them up on the screen real quick. We do give away a webcam cover and a ring light every show. We also are going to mix it up a little bit today and give away a $25 Amazon gift card, because who doesn't like to shop it on Amazon, right? So we're going to be giving away a $25 gift card as well, and 3 months of easel.com for 3 winners. Easel.com is our sponsor. They're an amazing little tool to create incredible graphics. So if you have not checked out easel.com, hopefully you'll be one of the winners. And if you aren't, you definitely need to check them out. The way we choose winners, let me talk about that real quick. If you guys hear something that you like didn't know, or even if you knew it and it's just like that, it cements that you have that aha moment, drop in #aha and down under here, and that's how we choose winners, through the comments. So it helps us too to understand honestly what really resonated and what you guys got out of the show. So that would be so helpful if you guys would do that for us. And if you know someone else who needs to understand their numbers, then push this out into the world. Pass it on and invite some folks to come join us. All right. So I promised you that I had a special guest, right? So let me introduce today's special guest. His name is Chris Mercer. Now, by the way, guys, just call him Mercer, because he says there's too many Chris's out there and it's confusing after a while, right? So just call him Mercer. That's, I guess, what everybody calls. In fact, I called him Chris, and he's like, no, just call me Mercer. I'm like, okay, I can remember this. He is the co-founder of measurementmarketing.io. He is highly sought after. By the way, I have hired him probably, 3 or 4 years back to set up my Google Analytics, because Well, one, it just made my brain hurt, and I had no idea how to do it. But he is absolutely at the top of his game when it comes to measurement, helping marketers set up their measuring stick, if you will, or maybe multiple ones, depending on what it is that you need measured. He helps marketing teams and agencies plan out what's important, what it is that they absolutely need to be measuring. Like I said, I hired him to help me set up my Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, and things of that nature. But the thing that really has been helpful is now all I have to do is log into Google Analytics and I can kind of see what's going on because I have this amazing dashboard that he built out for us. And again, it's about those reports so that you can forecast and optimize your marketing efforts. And most of us, and that was me certainly, for most of my online journey, I had no way to measure my results. So enter Chris, and that's why I'm excited to have him join us today. Welcome. Woo, Chris. Uh-oh, no sound.
Uh-oh.
We got you.
Are we back? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for having me, Kim. It's a pleasure. Happy to be here.
Yes. So glad you're here. Like I shared before, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, their head just spins around, when you start talking numbers. That was certainly me. You probably run into a lot of business owners like that, right? Who
100%. You're exactly right. It's like people know they have to but they kind of look at it like, oh, I need to take my medicine. It's like the necessary evil I have to get over as an entrepreneur, which is, is true. That's the hard part. It's like, yeah, you kind of do, but you can kind of do a little Mary Poppins magic to it, right? You can do a little spoonful of sugar to help that medicine go down. There's different ways to do it. That's kind of what we help people to do, make it a little easier.
And yeah, it's not even the coated pill, right? That goes down easily. It's the nasty, liquid. Yuck.
Way to sell it. Yes, it's exactly right though. You're exactly right. But it is incredibly useful. And that's the thing, right? Is that you have to take it. But then once you know it, you can start taking more meaningful actions as a marketer. As a business owner, you can start adjusting your resources a little bit more usefully, and ultimately, obviously, to help you grow your business a little bit faster than you would otherwise normally be able to.
Well, like I said, I agree totally. Now, when I first started, though, which is probably where a lot of people that are watching or listening are in that place of I'm not taking that medicine yet. So here, convince me that I need to, right? So when you first started, how did you get started in this whole measuring space, analytics, and trying to figure out the passion that you have developed for the measuring side of people's businesses? What did that look like when you got started?
The origin story, the radioactive spider that bit me. Yeah, I think for us, we started doing WordPress sites way back in the day. That was how I initially started. And really, truthfully, before that, we had started a WordPress site that trained people how to do WordPress sites. So we're like, we're just going to show people how to build WordPress sites. So my first site was a membership site to show people how to create WordPress sites. That led to people saying, this is a lot of work. How much to just have you build it? And so we started, I learned outsourcing. We brought in some developers. We created this little agency that was building WordPress sites. But pretty quickly, we realized there was this commodification that was going on with that service, at least for this type of sites that we were doing, kind of off-the-shelf themes and things like that. And so we didn't want to compete on price as much. And so we said, okay, well, we're going to build sites and then we're going to help you optimize the site. And believe it or not, way back then, this thing called conversion rate optimization was new. Nobody really thought about taking up. They just thought your results were your results. They didn't know they should split test or adjust things and try new things to get better results. So that was just starting to hit the market. So we were doing conversion rate optimization with these WordPress sites. Well, in order to improve a conversion rate, you must first measure for that conversion rate, enter Google Analytics. So I, like all of you, was brand new, had no idea what analytics was, threw in analytics on the code or turned it on a plugin or something else at the time to get it working, and jumped in there and then started trying to figure it out. And like pretty much most people that are going to be watching this show, definitely was me. I got into it and I got my head beat in a few times and I'm like, this is stupid. I'll come back to this later. Let me just go to check what this other thing says instead. And then finally, I decided to really look at the tool itself and figure out what was possible with it and kind of lift the hood and get a little more into it. And as soon as I started doing that, I realized two things. One is the tool needs to be set up to really get true usefulness out of it. And Google at the time really wasn't doing a great job. Nothing against Google. They do a fantastic product, but they weren't doing a lot to push out like kind of like manuals for normal people. They have developer manuals. They have manuals for data analysts and data scientists, but that's not most entrepreneurs. We don't really want to deal with numbers a whole lot. We just want to know what actions to take next. So we started looking at it and saying, okay, now that we know what this tool can do, what can we do to sort of help people understand how to use it? So we would show some of our clients, and this is still when we were doing WordPress sites, we'd show clients and say, hey, here's where you can see your goals, and here's where your opt-ins are, and here's what your purchases are. And almost overnight, it was practically that fast, we had clients stop asking about their websites, and they would be like, yeah, forget the website. Go back to the analytics thing. How did you do that? And then they started referring to us of their friends and acquaintances and peers that were coming to us not to improve their websites or to get, different websites. It was to learn about analytics for their existing website. And then right then we decided, okay, we're going to pivot because this is the area. Nobody's really effectively helping people to really understand this, not really learn numbers, not for numbers people, but numbers for normal people. Like that's kind of what we try to do is these tools can be complicated and overwhelming, and they are, let's call what they are. The spade's a spade, right? They can be complicated and overwhelming, but they don't have to be if you have a certain framework. And if you look at them just slightly differently than maybe how you have been in the past, all of a sudden they open up, they become incredibly useful. And that's been our claim to fame ever since.
I love that. Numbers for regular people. So those of you who are with us today, I want to know, are you a regular person? Because that resonated with me. But, when normally...
Numbers for people who don't like numbers, yes.
Yes, that's me. And I bet that's you too. Or at least I bet there's a lot of you guys out there who don't want to mess with this. So when it comes to like Google Analytics, is it the tool of choice for your website primarily when it comes to tracking the things that you just mentioned, like your conversions or where your traffic is coming from or what content is performing the best? And those are things that are really relevant, right, for us as business owners.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm gonna back up a little bit. The short answer is yes. Analytics is definitely the tool of choice. It's the one that we recommend because it's a best-in-class tool. It does a ton of stuff. It's free for the vast majority of users, which is fantastic because it does amazing things and the budget is right. And I think I want to back. The reason I said back up a little bit is because before you think about the tools you're going to use, think about why you're using the tools. And so this is the concept of measurement marketing and kind of why we went with that term at measurementmarketing.io. So when you have a sale of any sort, and I always like to try to think of things in terms of brick and mortar because it's easier to sort of visualize that real world concept of how did it used to be in the before days? Well, brick and mortar, if you're trying to sell something, there is a conversation that's being had. You go to a Starbucks, it's you and the barista and you're talking most of the time. If you go to, buy a golf club and somebody's coming out there to measure your swing and exchange the golf club and try things out or whatever. Like, this is back in the days when everybody could go hang out with each other. So in brick and mortar, there was always a conversation. Well, that conversation that leads to some sort of transaction, whether it's a purchase or an email address or whatever that conversation is, that is still happening. That conversation never stopped. The conversation moved online. And so what happened is when online took over and everybody started moving online more now than ever before, everybody's sort of moving to this digital way of e-commerce and promotion of their companies. All that conversation is now moving online. So if that conversation with you and I, if we were just having a conversation and I was talking to you even about my own company or you to me about yours, you could see things in my face. You could hear things in my tone. You obviously know the words that I'm saying. You can hear things I'm saying, and you can direct the conversation better when you hear my side of it. But digitally, it kind of all goes dark. And at the same time, there's all these tools out there that give you an enormous amount of data, what's going on. So at the same time, you have access to everything you could ever possibly want to know. And at the same time, you know less than you ever have before because there's too much and it's overwhelming. So for us, all things measurement are focused on hearing their side of the conversation because that conversation is still happening. It's the user and the website now. They're not having a conversation directly with you, but they are having a conversation with your website. And you can listen for that conversation. And tools like analytics will help you to understand things like, okay, what traffic source sent them in the first place? What traffic source is the best at helping people actually create sales? Which traffic source is the best at actually creating leads? They're not always the same, not always sometimes supposed to be the same. Which traffic source is good at just awareness of my brand? And it can help me to your point about content marketing, which one's really good at engaging them with my brand? And again, those traffic sources sometimes are by design not supposed to be the same. But with Google Analytics, you can measure for that. You can hear their side of the conversation. And when you understand how your users are using your site and the conversation that they're having with your site, you can then adjust your marketing to keep the conversation going in the direction you want it to go. And I'll give you a perfect example of how we do this at measurement.marketing.io. Recently, we have a bunch of different courses that we teach. So we had a bunch of different courses, and we do new courses about every 4 to 6 weeks. When we first started this, we would have one course, and maybe 2 courses, and then 3 courses, and people would come to the page and they would buy courses, and it was great. Fast forward about a year and a half, almost 2 years later, we're still following the same pattern because we got caught in our own little rut. And we're looking at our conversion rates to this page, which has our courses, and the conversion rate is getting lower and lower and lower. Why? Because the conversation that was being had, and we could see this in the numbers. Number one, the conversion rate was there. Number two, there was a distraction in where the clicks were going. And it was because there was way too many options. And so we looked at this and we said, okay, well, the conversation that they're having with the page is just giving them too many choices. They're not sure what to do. They're no longer engaging with that customer journey, with that particular sales funnel like we expected them to. So from a marketing perspective, how can we change the conversation so that it keeps going in the right direction? And so what we ended up doing was grouping our courses in terms of what we call Kickstarter packs now. So we have an analytics Kickstarter pack, and a tag manager one, a data studio one, a strategy one. And so now people come to the page and they can say, I just want to learn about analytics, not which of the 72 different analytics courses do you have? It's, I want to learn about analytics. And then it walks them through the process to help them to get that. And instantly, it was overnight, we saw conversion rates bump up because that conversation changed. And we know that the decisions that we made as marketers worked because we measured for that conversation. And we can see, oh, okay, now they're going the way we want them to go. They're making through the site, they're engaging with the topics, and they're progressing through to ultimately, do some sort of purchase event. So it worked really, really well. So that's an example of measuring for that.
So basically through that journey that you just described, you realized that you needed to create customer journeys for your clients because of the way they were or weren't engaging with your links. Yeah. Is that correct?
It was an evolution of a customer journey. So there was a customer journey. It just wasn't the same journey a year later, right? They weren't responding the same way they had. So we needed to adjust as marketers. And that's exactly right.
I love it. It's so funny that you brought this up, and one of the things I really am keen in on here is something that we're doing right now internally. We're trying to get my website rebranded. I've been working on it for 2 years. Don't, it's a long story.
I've been there.
But one of the things that we have really been trying to nail down is just the simple things like our nav bar, which is cutting down the options. Because people are overwhelmed with the options. You need to give a succinct way for them to find the things they're looking for, but not give them so many options that they can't, they're overwhelmed with the choices, right? So, so it's kind of interesting because you were basically saying the same thing, but well, when it comes to Google, to analytics in particular, and Google Analytics, one of my questions, and guys, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in. Obviously, because we hired you guys to set up our Google Analytics, and we go to the website and pay attention to, we log in to Google Analytics and look at it from that perspective. But are there, once you set it up, are there WordPress plugins that you can pull the data points that you need to pull into your WordPress site, like a Google Analytic WordPress plugin, or is the best option still just logging in and looking at the platform itself?
That is such a great question, because when you and I worked together, it was back in the day. And what I mean by back in the day, it was before a tool called Google Data Studio existed. So now there is something called Google Data Studio, which is what I would use going forward. Now, I still love Google Analytics. I use the reports in Google Analytics. There's one called the Source Medium Report that's exceptional. Where you can get about 80% of your answers just from that one report. It tells you where the traffic's coming from, tells you how much of that traffic you're getting, tells you how engaged that traffic is, and it tells you what the results of that traffic is. It's amazing. It's a great report. But when it comes to funnels, when you're trying to figure out, okay, what's my customer journey and where are the different conversion rates between the steps, when it comes to trying to, break that down by traffic source and things like that, Google Analytics can do it. It's just harder to get there. It's harder to see the story there. So there is a tool called Google Data Studio where you can build a dashboard that connects into Google Analytics. So it uses Google Analytics as its database, so to speak, its data source. But it builds a dashboard, and you can make really nice looking, highly graphic funnels, which is what I really like. Graphic as in you've got step 1, step 2, step 3, and there's very few numbers. It's just a picture of a funnel, and you can see where everything is. And it makes a lot more sense intuitively to somebody who's not a numbers person, because instead of looking at a data table with spreadsheets and sort of having that mentality, which I admit, like a lot of Google Analytics reports, there's just too much. It's more stuff than you need, and it gets confusing because they give you more than you need sometimes. But with Data Studio, you can actually build a dashboard that will actually just answer the questions you have and nothing else. So you basically get into the dashboard, get your answers, and then get out, because now you know what actions to take. And that's what I would actually recommend that people use is that particular tool. Now there's steps to that. First is you've got to make sure your analytics is set up correctly. You got to make sure that you've got, and there's a process to that. I mean, it's you cannot avoid that. But when you set up analytics correctly, all you're doing is you're trying to tell analytics how to tell you a better story. The way that I try to think about this is if I gave you a children's book, a very easy to read children's book, and I just gave it to you and I said, hey, Kim, could you read this book to me? You could probably read that book to me. Let's say it was a third grade novel, no problem. You could totally read it. Easy, right? Well, if I ripped out those pages of that book, threw them in the air, and let them land on the ground and said, okay, Kim, can you read me the story? Could you read the story? Now, I've had people answer two ways. One is there's a lot of people who go, no, I can't possibly read the story. And I go, wait a second. So you just, now you can't read all of a sudden? Like how? And they start laughing. They're like, actually, I can read. Okay. So it's just harder to read it because you have to go and gather the pages, make sure they're in the right order, flip some around, try to figure out the order of things. Maybe you lose one under the couch, so you got to kind of make up some stuff in between to try to get point A to point B, and you tell the story. It's harder to tell the story, but it's possible. Analytics out of the box is like story ripped out, where all the pages are everywhere, and you got to kind of figure it out. And it takes a lot more effort than it really needs to. But analytics, when you set it up, is like binding those pages in a book, putting them in an order, and you just open up your analytics reports and you go, cool, here's what's working, here's what's not. I can go take my next actions. And you're not spending forever sitting in Google Analytics. One of my most popular questions I get is, how do I analyze reports? And one of the first things I say is you shouldn't ever have to analyze a report. If you do, the report is too complicated. What you should is build your reports so they just give you answers. And that's kind of what I think Data Studio is really good at. Getting back to your initial question is Google Data Studio is really good at focusing you on, here's your answer based on what it got from Google Analytics.
So, so it sounds like I need Google Data Studio now, and sounds like I need to get that set up. So
it's a suite of things, yeah, because it works. Because remember, you have Tag Manager too, right? And your installation. So the way that these things work together, because there's confusion as like, what is Google coming out with? Is this another analytics? It's so the way that these work is Google Tag Manager collects the information. And by information, I mean the behaviors that are happening on the site. So Google Tag Manager collects when somebody gets a page view. It collects when somebody clicks on a link. It collects when somebody becomes a lead. It collects when somebody buys something. It collects when somebody watches a video or scrolls or whatever else you tell it to collect. It takes all those things and then it sends it to Google Analytics to be stored. And so Google Analytics is really, it's a good behavioral database. It stores behaviors. That's what it's really built for. So Analytics collects everything, but it does not store. It sends to Google Analytics, which actually holds it, and that's what stores it. And then Data Studio is better at reporting because that's what it was built to do. Whereas Analytics wasn't really built for reporting. It's just that it can do reporting, right? Tag Manager isn't built at all for storage. It can just collect. So you got collect, store, and then Data Studio is what you build all your reports and dashboards for.
Okay, let's just assume that there's people listening or watching right now that don't have Google Analytics set up. So do you have to have Google Analytics set up first before you use the Google Data Studio?
Yes, before Tag Manager and Data Studio, I would say you set up Google Analytics. And I'd say if anyone's just starting out, you're like, man, I don't know about these new tools. Don't worry about them. I'm a huge believer. One of our sayings here is get good enough to get going, come back and make it better later on, because you will. Your implementation will always change. The questions you ask will always change. And so you're going to adjust things anyway. So don't worry about being perfect and don't worry about being, doing something that somebody says you should do. Just work with where you are. So if you're just starting out with Google Analytics, what I would do is, first thing is obviously turn it on, get it activated, get the script on the page, however you know how to do that. And then learn to tag your traffic coming in, something called UTM parameters. You can Google them. We'll give you some tools at the end of this so you can learn how to do all that stuff. But you can tag your traffic. So for example, I'm going to be able to tag the traffic that I got from this event. So, at the end, I'm going to give you a link. You'll see it at work. You'll see what I'm talking about at work. And so I'll know how many people actually came to the site from this particular broadcast here when we were doing the live show. And then I'm going to know what the results of that were, how many became leads or how many people saw a certain page or that sort of stuff. So I can see what the results of this as a traffic source are. So when you're just starting out analytics, first step, turn it on, which most people have. Second step, learn how to do your traffic. and making sure that you identify where your traffic sources are. Was it a paid Facebook ad, or was it something that you just shared on Facebook? Or was it somebody that somebody else shared on Facebook? Like, you can measure for that sort of stuff as long as you know how to set it up. And it's not that hard to do it. With analytics, it's not about being hard. It's that people just don't know. And so once you're aware of these things, you go, cool, okay, now that I know it's a thing, I should just start doing it. And then you'll start seeing them everywhere. It's kind of like when you decide to buy a new car and you're like, oh, I'm going to go buy a Volkswagen Beetle. Then you see everybody driving Beetles all of a sudden. It's the same thing with this. You're going to start seeing measurement everywhere, and you'll see, oh, that's how that company's tagging their traffic. And that's how that company's tagging their traffic. And it'll get a lot easier.
So let's talk about traffic sources real quick, because I want to keep that question up, because I definitely want to have Chris take a stab at that one too. But when it comes to traffic sources, I think sometimes people don't understand traffic sources. Like, you know, technically, not technically, it is a fact. Like social media, whether it's Twitter or Facebook, or, you know, you post a blog on Twitter or Facebook, and somebody clicks and goes there, then that's a traffic source. You know, you might have a business card and somebody comes to your website, and that's a traffic source. Somebody might find you on the Google machine. That is a traffic path to you. So, you know, understanding where your traffic is coming from is so important. And that's, I think, what Chris is saying is, you know, tag that traffic. So if it's coming from Twitter or a Facebook ad, or like to his point, like he's going to share a great link or maybe two with us at the end. And that he'll now be able to track the results of this. So when it comes to traffic sources and those tags, is it easy to apply a tag to a specific traffic source for somebody that's, you know, may have their Google Analytics set up, but like, they're like, what's a tag?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it is. It's hard because it's so unknown in the beginning. You're like, man, this is just this whole new world. So by itself, analytics will do its best to get an idea and tell you an idea of kind of your traffic story. It'll say, okay, here's where I think your traffic's coming from. But it really only has three sort of types of traffic that it does on its own. The first type is organic, which is exactly what you think it is. It's the search engines. So anything that's organic, it'll say things like Google organic, or Bing organic, or Yahoo organic. And then the Google in that case would be the source of traffic, and it's a type of traffic, what they call the medium, but it's the type of traffic. So it's organic traffic from Google, or organic traffic from Bing, just search engine traffic, and it tells you the search engine. The other type of traffic besides organic is referral. And that's where that's analytics telling you, okay, I'm not sure exactly where they came from, but they came from that other site. And so you see things like facebook.com/referral or youtube.com/referral. Well, that tells you it was on the YouTube platform. Then they came to you, but it doesn't necessarily tell you what video they just watched. It doesn't necessarily tell you what ad they just clicked on if it was a Facebook ad. It just says Facebook. So you don't really know much about where they came from in that case. And then there's that third type, which is direct none. It literally just says direct none in the analytics platform. And that is Google Analytics saying, I don't know, they just showed up. And that's how to think about that. Now, sometimes, like in our case, our company name is measurementmarketing.io. Well, our company name is our website. So we have a lot of people that when they're searching for a company, they're just typing in measurementmarketing.io, they hit enter, it comes to measurementmarketing.io. And that's analytics going, it'll just be direct. So that's analytics saying, I don't know, they just showed up. So there are times where that will happen. But a lot of times, if somebody just searched for measurement marketing and they Googled it, and then they see our domain name in Google and they click on it, well, that's going to come from Google Organic. And then if we do the link here, where they come from, and if I wasn't tagging it and you just clicked on the link that was, you know, maybe in the comments or something here, it would show as facebook.com referral because it came from Facebook, from that particular platform or whatever social platform it's on at the time. So that's sort of how that works. Now, what you can do is you can help analytics tell you a better story when it comes to your traffic. And that's what these little tags are for. And we call them tags, and really they're just parameters that are in the URL. And a lot of these words are going to be, you know, not something that you've heard before, especially if you're just starting out in this world, but you will hear them 1,000 times. So you'll get used to hearing them. But essentially you've got your URL. So wherever you're sending people, maybe it's to your sales page or to a Shopify store or to something else you've got going on, whatever that URL is, you know, mysite.com/my page, that's the URL part. Well, all you do is you add on these little UTM, they're called UTM parameters, and you will see them everywhere. And again, you're going to have an example of this so you can actually see it when we do the link today. But you'll see this thing that says UTM_source equals, and it'll have a word in there. And that's what shows up. So for ours, we're going to say, that this marketing show is going to be the source of traffic. And then for the type of traffic, I'm going to keep it under something called podcast for me, because I want to count this as podcast style traffic. And so I'm going to tell it, hey, and this is podcast type of traffic, and it's for this particular product that we're trying to ultimately sell. And here's the day that we actually recorded the live event, so that if you and I do this again 6 months from now, I have a way to tell which of those live shows was it that actually, caused more sales than the others, so I can compare traffic. So this is the thing, is some of this you definitely have to practice a little bit. But again, I'm going to give you tools. There's videos you can watch. Actually, just one video in particular that I've created that'll help walk you through how to set this up and how to think about how to actually tag the traffic. But UTM parameters is it. And if you just Google for UTM parameters, you will see a million things out there that talk about it, because it is one of those steps that very early on, when you get into measurement, it's the first things. That's the popular question that I get is, okay, what's the first thing I should do in Google Analytics? Learn to tag your traffic. Because if you don't know where your traffic is coming from, if you don't know how those people found your site, you can't go back and get more of it, because you can't tell what's good and what's bad. You can't tell where it came from in the first place. So don't worry about setting up goals. Don't worry about results. Don't worry about your e-commerce or any of that stuff first. First thing is get good at traffic and understanding that traffic story. Where is the traffic coming from?
And so just to make sure I'm connecting the dots for everybody, the Google tagging feature is done through UTMs. So it's not two separate things. It's one thing. The tagging functionality is done through UTM code. And it's pretty easy. I mean, we've been using UTMs to track our traffic now for a while. And one of the things we do, just to give a different spin, but exactly the same thing, is tracking traffic for our influencer gigs that we're doing. If we're doing an influencer thing with Monday.com, for example, we want to know where how much traffic we actually sent, or they're sending to us, either way, one or the other, depending on the scenario. But we can do that and have real numbers to back up and support what they're paying, if they are paying me as an influencer, right? So it's been really helpful to track the results of things too. So it's not always just about, it is about traffic, but at the end of the day, it's showcasing, because brands want to see, like, okay, how much traffic did you send to us? Or how many, like if you write a blog post for them and it's on your site, they're like, how much traffic is that particular blog getting? Or there's a lot of different variations and things that go into it, but it all matters.
And I'll give you one more too.
The Google,
okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I'll give you one more
Go
example
ahead.
that if anybody that has a list, an email list, that's another, because we're talking a lot, with Kim and I talking about all these different sources of traffic. You may not be doing podcasts. You may not be doing speaking engagements. You may not be doing influencer stuff, but you probably have an email list. And if you email out your list and you're not doing this UTM thing that we're talking about, what's happening is people are clicking on those emails, they're coming to your site, and Google is pretty much, for the most part, Google Analytics is going to say, I don't know, they just showed up. It's going to come as direct non-traffic. But if you actually put it in as email, which is what we do, we use Infusionsoft as our CRM. And so when I go into my analytics, it says Infusionsoft email. And so I know they came from the email autoresponder. I know what day email it was that they got. I know which campaign it was. I know which sequence it was. It's because I'm using those UTMs. So when people are like, man, I just want to know what email is actually causing results, that's how you do it, is by doing UTMs. And that's one of those things that most people are doing some sort of emailing of their customers. And that's the first thing you should learn to use UTMs for.
Yeah. So let's say, for example, somebody that's listening or watching has multiple websites, or maybe they're managing clients' websites. Maybe they're, to your point, maybe they're doing WordPress for someone and they really haven't stepped into helping their clients manage their numbers yet, but they would like to. Is it possible to use one Google Analytics account to manage multiple websites?
It is, but I wouldn't, because you don't want to combine. So think about them all as like buckets of data, right? You don't want to combine a bunch of people's websites into one bucket of data, because things are going to get mismatched pretty quickly. But what you can do is when you create your Google Analytics, you have your own Google account, just like, Gmail account or a G Suite account that you've got. So when you're using your Google account, that Google account can create a completely separate analytics account, and every Google account can have up to 100 analytics accounts. So you can set up analytics accounts for a client. You can help them with it, especially if you're building a site. Maybe you work with them for 5 or 6 months, whatever it is. And then you can hand off that to a client. You can transfer that to a client. So it's no longer under your account. It'll be, once it's set up, you can give it to them and then they can run it from there. So that's what's really nice. You can actually have a lot of accounts with Google Analytics, but keep them separate, keep them at the account level, especially if you have different clients coming through.
And then when it comes to the Google Data Studio, can you pull in data from multiple Google Analytics accounts instead of it being? Totally, I know this is a little bit. Maybe a little bit more advanced, but I'm just curious because if you have, whether it's multiple websites or if you're managing people's Google Analytics accounts, can you have one view of all of the data points?
Yes. Yes. Short answer is yes. Good. It's Data Studio is really, really flexible. And so the way that it works is when you set up your Google Analytics, those of you who have had a tiny bit of experience will know what I'm talking about. There's the account that you set up first. There's the property, which is that little UA dash number that they give you. That's the actual, property ID. And that's where all the analytics stuff is stored. And then there's something called a view that you can set up. Well, Data Studio connects in the view. So you can have 8 different views for your Google Analytics account. One maybe for, the e-commerce view, and one is for lead generation and answering questions around that. And something else is for, users or something like maybe you've got a membership site. So it just does membership pages. So you can create different views of your data, and each of those can connect into Data Studio separately. And so you can create separate reports from those if you want. Or you could just have one general report. So for example, you might have a report that says, here's how many users I had over the last 7 days. Well, that's a question you can ask any analytics account. It won't matter. And there's literally a little drop-down thing you can add in Data Studio where you just drop it down into the right and just choose your different Google accounts and flip it. And then that report will adjust to that account. So it's pretty useful what you can do with that tool.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So I know we had a question a minute ago and I'm sorry, I kind of went on. I'd forgotten about it, honestly. But can we circle that question back up?
The pixels,
yes. Do Google Analytics clash with pixels like Facebook, Facebook ads pixels, LinkedIn pixels, pixels, I guess, across the board?
Yeah, pixels in general. Yeah. And the short answer is no, they don't, which is good. They're all made to work sort of independently of one another. So installing Google Analytics will not hurt anything that if you've installed Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or anything else that you've got going on, Pinterest, whatever it is, doesn't matter. They all work independently of each other. Now, if you're using Tag Manager, and that's where it's a little different because a lot more vendors are starting to use Tag Manager now. The way that Tag Manager works is that is sort of a platform that's in charge of measurement. And it works with more than just Google Analytics. Tag Manager is the type of tool that you can say, hey, Tag Manager, I want you to put analytics on the page. I want you to put Facebook on the page. I want you to put Twitter and LinkedIn on the page. And so what happens is you put Tag Manager on the page itself. That's it, just the Tag Manager script. And then it does all these other things. So sometimes if you've ever heard of somebody saying, man, I tried this and it clashed with my other stuff, that's probably what was happening is they used Tag Manager to install analytics, but Tag Manager also had Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, and the page itself also had that. And so you had Tag Manager and the page both having it, and they duplicate. So if there's Tag Manager involved, you just got to go a little slow with that. It's something called migrating. When you take it off of your site, you give it to Tag Manager, and then Tag Manager's in charge of it. That's sort of how the whole thing works. But just go slow, and it's not. But they're not developed and to conflict with each other in any way, shape, or form. And if they are, there's an implementation issue. That's all it is. It doesn't mean that, oh yeah, I can't do this. It's, I just did this wrong or somebody set it up incorrectly. There's a way to fix it for sure, because they will work, they are built to work together.
Yeah, and that's what I find kind of fascinating is even like in WordPress, there's usually places you insert your Google code or you insert your Facebook pixel. I mean, they do normally accommodate one another,
Yes.
if you know what you're looking for and what you're trying to, where you connect the dots, I guess is a better way of saying it. So what kind of tags should I think about? Number of tags? That's a great question for Anna.
Yeah, it's a great question. So stepping back to the what we think about as a tag. So, and this is the challenge of this industry, is that people use the same words for a lot of different things, and they can kind of mean some things that are different. So when we talk about those UTMs, those UTM parameters, you hear them referenced as like tagging your traffic. So when you're talking about UTMs, there are 5 different ones you can use. You can tell Google Analytics what the source of traffic is, which is kind of like the brand name of the traffic, so like Facebook or YouTube or wherever, your email system. Then there's the type of traffic. That's the second thing. So first is the brand name of the traffic source. Second thing is the type of traffic. The third thing is, what is the point of the traffic? What's the purpose of the traffic? Why are you sending that traffic there in the first place? So for us, we've got a program called Win Monthly Pass. We have these different courses, kind of all you can eat buffet of courses. So all of our traffic that I send there will be for the point of the win, to sell the win campaign. So for us, we just say, hey, the traffic's called win. That's how we tag it. We tag it as win. Then you can tag the headline or the subject line of the email, and you can ultimately tag differentiators, the things that make this unique click different from something else. So as an example, and again, when we give you this link, you'll see it in action. I'm tagging the differentiator for this link is what I'm going to put is I'm going to put the date. I'm going to put June 2020. So that I know that the recording, when people clicked on this link, it was from the June 2020 recording, because that's when we recorded this one. So that's the differentiator. And that way, in 6 months from now, if Kim and I get back on a call, then we talk about Data Studio in depth or something like that. We come back, and that one will be, September 2020 or December 2020, whatever it happens to be, that date. And then if somebody clicked on a link there versus the one they clicked on today, I'd be able to see the difference between those two. So that's kind of why those things exist. So again, it's the source of the traffic, the type of traffic, the point of the traffic, what's the purpose of the traffic, and then other things like the headline or the subject line, and of course, anything that makes it unique or different. So up to those 5 things. Now, when we talk about Tag Manager, that's different types of tags. That's like the scripts and pixels and all that sort of stuff, and you can pretty much put anything you want through there.
Love that answer. I picked up on something that you said that I hadn't considered. I'm not sure we're doing, which is just tracking things like our subject lines so now I'm like, we'll have a meeting now. Next time we have a meeting with the team, I'll be like, yes, are we doing these things? Yeah, I know we're not doing the Data Studio, and that's very intriguing to me, because I'm like, I think I personally, I would love it just to be able to log in and see a visual, because I'm a visual person, being able to see the visual results of something versus trying to like weed through all the numbers to figure out, or create a report and still not be quite sure what the report says. So
it's an amazing tool, and it's only 2 years old. Like, it's not that old. So it came out a little while back, and they had it in beta for a while, and now this past year, maybe year and a half, is really where they started putting a ton of development into it. But I 100% recommend it, and it's free, which is even better.
Yeah. That is awesome. Well, which leads me, as you guys, if you'll go ahead and pick our winners while I ask Chris this question, which is, what's the future? Like, like when we first started, it was Google Analytics and some tagging, but that's evolved, right?
Yeah.
So where do you see
Tag Manager was the new thing to play with? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And now I'm like Google Data Studio. Like, I got to figure this out. What do you think the future is as the analytics continue to get better, and the way for us to look at our at tracking our numbers gets better? What do you think's next?
That's a great question. I think the evolution continues. I don't see a completely brand new, radically different platform necessarily coming out. I see Tag Manager will continue to get better. It always has, and it's been doing that for years. And so it will be easier and easier to use. That is one thing 100% Team Google has done incredibly well, is make that tool easier and easier to use. When it first came out, it was very technical, and there's still a tiny learning curve to it. But again, if you look at it the right way, it gets pretty easy to learn. But it's getting easier every day. I think that's a trend that will continue. Google Analytics is going to stay right where it is. I don't think that's going to get any better or any worse. That's just going to sit there for now. And I'm going to come back to that in a second. And then there's going to be Data Studio. Data Studio is another tool that Google is investing heavily in. So that is getting better and better. Every single month, there are new updates. We do workshops. We do free workshops every week. And one of the workshops we do on the first Wednesday, in fact, this Wednesday is the first Wednesday of the month, we're going to go back over the last 30 days and we take a look at the tools and say what's changed in Tag Manager and Analytics and Data Studio. Every month for the last 2 years since we've been doing this, Data Studio has had updates and changes. Like, it's been amazing what they're doing with that tool. So that will also continue to get better and better and better. So as far as like, when do I start learning these tools? Might as well start learning them now. You don't have to be perfect. Just get good enough to get going. You will naturally get better at it. Don't worry about it, right? They'll be there as you grow. They will grow with you, So I would start doing that. Now, in terms of like what the future looks like, what one huge thing that is going to impact everybody, but not now and not at the level where most of us are, including myself as a business. There's something called, it's what we're kind of short coding to the Google Analytics 2.0. It is literally a completely new analytics platform that Google has created, and they're calling it Google Analytics App and Web. And so you might even see this in the back end of your analytics. You'll see that there's this new app and web stuff. And people think, oh, it's just a slightly different, version of analytics. And it's not a slightly different version. It's completely different. It has nothing to do at all with the original analytics. And the only reason I mention that here is because people have often asked, like, oh, analytics, I've heard about this, or I've heard about that thing, or I've heard about this other limitation it has, or whatever. And yes, Google's heard all of that stuff too. But this tool is incredibly useful. And again, if you're just trying to figure out what my results are and how did I get my results, analytics is a fantastic tool. It does everything that I needed to do and then some. I know my results. I know how I got my results. I can break it down by traffic source, and I can go out and repeat my successes, and I can minimize my failures. It is easy to do that once it's set up properly. This new Google Analytics is built for today's world, though. Because remember, when analytics first came out, there was no smartphone. Didn't exist. People never browsed the internet on a mobile device. There was barely laptops. There was desktop and laptops. There was no tablets. So there was never this idea of cross-device journey that ever had to happen. Now, when Facebook came around, they were kind of born in a cross-device world. So they set up their measurements to do cross-device. And so you see these platforms like Facebook Analytics that says, oh, we're omni-channel and blah, blah, blah. Well, now this new Google Analytics that is coming out, and technically is available now, it's in beta, but it is very, very technical. I would not recommend anybody go anywhere near it right now unless you're a 100% a numbers person, because it is technical and it is complicated. What I can promise you is a year from now, it'll be easier. And a year from then, it'll be even easier. But right now, it's kind of just been born. So it's kind of what your Tag Manager was when it first came out. Super complicated and very technical, straight from the engineer's lab. But the reason that I mentioned it here is because you talked about the future, and the future for this platform is exciting, because this is Google saying, here, we know what the internet is now. We know there's cross devices. We know there's going to be more cross devices. We know there's Internet of Things. We want to be able to measure all of that different stuff. And we want to build a platform that can do that. That's what this is. That's what this app and web is. So it can measure mobile device, and as they cross over to the desktop and then back into a tablet, and then, talk to their assistant, their Google Assistant, whatever, like all of this stuff Google's got, and they're trying to figure out how do we measure and tie the customer journey across all these different channels. And so that's what's really cool about the platform. It is not there yet, but that's why it exists. And so they've sort of just pushed it out because they're real big and let's get it out and get people playing with it and see what they like and don't like. And they've already changed a ton of stuff, and they will continue to. That's why I said don't worry about learning it now, but have, the good part about this is just know that that's out there. The fact that Google's doing that means everything's going to get easier from a measurement perspective. So learn measurement using the tools that we currently have that we can be really good at, which is Tag Manager, Analytics, Data Studio. And again, if you're just starting out, forget about Tag Manager and Data Studio, just do Analytics. Just know your story there and get really good at understanding the basics. Because then as you're ready, you will naturally move into these other platforms. And by then, maybe 2 to 3 years out, you'll be ready for those other platforms, and it'll make a lot more sense. They'll be a lot easier to use, and you'll have this whole cross-device thing, because Google's kind of basically paving the way for the future of digital measurement in that program, and it's particularly exciting to be able to see that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, one of I guess the biggies in the tech world, online space. Let's restate that. From a social perspective, I think Facebook is innovating faster than the other social platforms by like miles. And then you've got Google, who there's no competitor really for Google, right? They just keep innovating and keep finding new landscape, if you will, or making the landscape better. It sounds like in this particular case when it comes to analytics. So that's exciting to hear. So Franna won the ring light. Yay! Congrats, Franna. Franna, if you will up in the if we can pop that up there, the little message, send message there. If you will send us your mailing address, we'll get that out in the mail. And same with the ring light. Whoever wins the ring light, if you'll send us a message with your mailing address, not the ring light, the webcam. Sorry, the webcam winner is Sue Barnes Porter. So Sue, if you will send us your mailing address, we'll get that out to you ASAP. Easel winners is Brenda, Vicky, and Nydia. I hope I said that correctly, Nydia. And if you guys will send us your email address, just click on the send message and send us your email address. And the $25 gift certificate. Did we get a winner for that one? No, I'm sorry, the $25 Amazon card. Did we pick a winner for that? Always love.
I love this show. This show's got a ton of winners. This is great.
Yes, we love giving stuff away here. We should have said, "Hey, Chris, do you want to give something away?" I wish we'd have known. But we're getting ready to connect dots on how you guys can find Chris. So
definitely.
All right. So I know somebody on the backside of my team there is scrambling right now with the Amazon winner. They're like, I forgot she had said we were going to give away an Amazon card. So anyway, while we're waiting on that, Chris, how can people connect with you? Where would you like them to go to learn more about how they can learn from you?
All right, great question. Thank you for asking. So this is the link I want to give you for two reasons. Even if you don't sign up for us, that's totally fine. I want you to see how this works. So what they offer, so to speak, that I've got for you, there's something we have called a Toolbox membership. It is completely free. It's workshops that come out every week, and you can watch the workshop for that week until it's replaced out with the next one. You've got about 40 different tools I think we give you back there, including tools to learn how to track your traffic. So there's one called the Traffic Tracking Toolkit that's part of this. So it's called the Toolbox membership. It's completely free. And I would encourage anybody who wants to learn about measurement, this is the baby step way into it. So you can kind of learn this. Now, when I give you this link, which is measurementmarketing.io/live show. So measurementmarketing.io/live show, all one word. When you click on that link, watch what happens. So in your browser URL, what's going to happen is you click on it and you think you're going to /live show, but what's going to happen is a redirect that's happening. So you end up on the Toolbox page. And so when you go to the Toolbox page, it'll say, okay, you're on the Toolbox. And if you look next to that, it'll say UTM source equals Marketing Show Live. And so it's, okay, that's how I know that it came from Marketing Show Live. And if you continue down that line, you'll see the next thing that says UTM medium equals podcast, because that's kind of the type of traffic that this is for us. And then I say UTM campaign, that's win, because that's the purpose of the traffic. That's why we're driving traffic. So that ultimately, I would love to have you part of Win Monthly Pass or any of our Win courses. Then next to that is UTM term. So marketing by numbers, like that's kind of what I put in it. This is the topic. So that's what I use to describe the topic of today's show. And then next to that, it says UTM content equals June 2020. That's how analytics is going to record in the content. So I can go to analytics and say, what were the events that I did? What were the podcasts I did in June 2020? And show me what the results of those were. And this would show up there. So that's an example of using UTMs to track something like, of course, in this case, a live show, a live podcast coming in from Facebook.
And you guys, so the Toolbox membership, definitely go check that out, guys. So it's measuremarketing.io. Thank you for putting that back up there. Yep. measuremarketing.io/live show. Now, listen, guys, you need to go there, at least go through the process so that Chris will look back on this in a couple of months and he'll say, ooh, Kim's show sent me some good quality traffic.
Look at all this traffic.
I need to go back on her show again. Just saying, y'all need to help me out, help a girl out here, okay? So Latoya, yay, is the Amazon gift card winner. So Latoya, if you'll send us your mailing address, sweetie, we will get an Amazon gift card out to you. Actually, we don't need a mailing address necessarily because I think I can send an Amazon gift card via just an email address. So send us your email address and we'll get you out a $25 Amazon gift card. Guys, don't forget, go to that link because you're going to help me out so that Chris will come back and talk numbers. I think I'd love to pick his brain just around one core thing. I'm really interested in this Google Data Studio concept and what that looks like. That's a whole new, I wasn't even aware of it. So I'm like, I got to figure this out. Yes,
cool platform,
please come back, Chris.
Definitely. I'd love to have you. Definitely. Love to be back for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And all of you guys are watching and spending time with me right now or on the replay. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to check out our sponsor, which is easel.com. So if you can go to kimgorst.com/easel, you can check them out. They have amazing professionally designed templates. So especially when it comes to social media content, you'll find some really great content there, guys. So check them out. Give Chris a hey, you taught me something amazing today in the comments so that he knows he's done a great job. And I appreciate you, Chris. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. Have a great rest
Thank
of your
you,
day,
Kim.
guys. Take care. God bless.